Welcome to the Supply Chain Ambassador podcast. I'm your host, Bruno, helping you navigate the world of supply chain in a fun and engaging way. On today's podcast, I have Martin Chernier. Martin is the president and founder of the Procurement Alliance of Canada and a recognized voice in the public sector procurement and professional services. Known with the procurement community as PACMAN, he has spent more than 2 decades helping suppliers, procurement professionals, and operational teams better understand the people, perspectives, and the processes behind government procurement. Having worn many hats throughout his career, from sales and staffing to industry advocacy, advisory committees, and procurement training, Martin believes better procurement outcomes begin with better communication, curiosity, and a stronger understanding of the expertise happening on all sides. Welcome, Martin.
Merci. Thanks, Bruno. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Can you give us more context of your journey getting to where you are?
So words matter, and so when and speaking of context, it explains quite a bit. And I would say that even going through this exercise, Bruno, I sometimes feel like my career makes more sense in reverse than it did going forward, right? So looking at where I've landed now, like it's the path wasn't as clear initially. And so context-wise is that I've got both my parents, they talk a lot, right? So they were business owners. I was raised in a retirement home. And so I had parents that were in sales and business people and talking and mingling with all sorts of people. And so that's built into the DNA. And so for those that know me as talking a lot, that is accurate. But I was raised by old, wise people. Like in at a young age, I remember spending a lot of time waiting for my parents to be done at work. And so I'd sit with these people that had time and had so many different stories share. And so I'd be listening and I was curious and I was asking why. And it feels like at every stage of my life, I've had people handing me hats and saying, here, try this, right? And I was curious and I'd be like, okay, cool, let's try that. And so, high school, and it's like, oh, you talk a lot, so you'd be great at public speaking, and there's this contest, and so I'd sign up for that, and then improv and drama and being involved with whatever it is that seemed interesting, because these experiences sounded cool and neat, so I wanted to try stuff. And so that test that they get you to take in high school for the what's it called, like a skills or whatever, aptitude, like what do you want to do when you're going to grow up, and then you answer a bunch of questions. I was tied between entrepreneur and teacher, so the results were like you could do either way. So it's interesting how now, like, I've landed in a world where I'm a business owner and I get to train and teach, but it wasn't clear at the time. It didn't make sense at the time. And so I tried stuff along the way. And so that journey of high school being proposed opportunities and like, hey, there's this radio show that's going on and we think you'd be a great host. And I was 15. I'm like, a radio show? Like at 15? This sounds neat. So I'll try that. I didn't even have my driver's license. I couldn't even drive myself so I had my co-host that would drive me and we'd do that, right? And then it was college. It was like, hey, you talk a lot and you have, people and you have this social network. So we need someone to be a student rep on the college board, and sitting on this college board and making decisions and understanding how people think and interact and come up with decisions and it was just a neat experience. And you should be the social director because you know people. And I'd organized pubs for the college, and it was just this neat experience of trying stuff, right? And so it's having these different opportunities and wise old people, mentors that have helped shape and guide that journey. And I had this fantastic mentor. I was out of high school, and again, you're great at public speaking. So we have this Saint Jean Baptiste event, and I live out in Castleman, and so there was an event, and I was 16 at the time, and we need an MC. So I was like, okay, I'll go and MC the event. Sure, sounds like a cool experience. And that mentor and an insurance agent was in the audience. And so she heard me and then reached out afterward and said, here's a hat to work in insurance, and there's a position. We'd love to bring you in as a summer job. We think, you'd be great. And so I'm like, sure, sounds great. I'll try that. And then having been exposed to how this individual, she's phenomenal, and she was running this great business where customer service, what I learned so that lady, Joanne is her name, and she was obsessed with let's words matter. So she was flat out obsessed with the customer experience. And being exposed to that at a young age, and you don't know better, right? So you figure, well, if you're trained by somebody that is caring about all of these details, and insurance contracts, as you can appreciate, if you own anything that requires insurance, these contracts are complex, and you don't understand all the intricacies. And so she was making it a point, and that stuck with me. And to this day, I know I see the relevance now. It didn't make as much sense initially, but explaining what is comprehensive coverage and what is the deductible and what is covered, what isn't, and making sure, and she insisted on that, making sure that we go and explain the contract. High level, we didn't get into the minutia, nuts and bolts, but explaining high level, here's what this means and here's why this matters. And you see it's raining, right? And so if you see that it's raining, we've got umbrellas right next to the door. So you're going to grab an umbrella, and we're going to greet clients in parking, because we want to make sure that the experience and so that whole customer service experience, and in making sure that people understood what they were buying, what they were getting themselves into for something that, and I could tell that there was fear at times because they're buying something that they don't fully understand, right? So having experienced the explaining complex stuff and making it clearer, and having someone say, thank you for explaining that's been helpful. It was fantastic. So that was like 16 years old, and then went on in college and university, and fantastic professor. I studied public management, and this professor that was just fascinating, right? You know how you have these people that will talk and they could read like the ingredients of like a cereal box, and you'd be fascinated by what they're describing. Well, he had that gift of just storytelling that was just very captivating. And he was in charge of the debate team. So he was coaching the debate team. And I had grew fond of this guy, and I needed to spend more time. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to sign up for this debate thing. And so made the team and was captain of the debate team. And captain of the debate team, as opposed to reading the one newspaper, my coach, this professor, was like, you need to read everything that is relevant and topical, because you need to be prepared to debate on anything and everything, and you have to be debating both sides. So not knowing at the time that this was going to be maybe useful as part of my career, to understand the different hats and to debate both sides. And so I can apply that to this day. And so it was just this journey of having people handing over hats and the network, and maintaining a network of individuals that were like, hey, you should consider this, or have you, and then, navigating through and then landing in between semesters and at university, looking for a summer job, staffing agency, person at university, you should check with a staffing agency, get there. Oh, you've got insurance and sales and you've done public speaking, we need someone to work for the company within the staffing agency. I'm like, well, I'm looking for a summer job. Well, what if we keep you and then you can keep doing your university thing, but part-time. And I'm like, okay. So that was like so it became a full-time gig. Yeah. And then the curiosity of understanding that universe and the whole, staffing agency land, but because it's Ottawa-based, the federal government was a huge client, right, for anybody that's based out of Ottawa. So trying to understand, and let's face it, government procurement is complex, and understanding the tools and the rules, and so having that lived experience of trying to figure out why is this particular department using this vehicle in this category, and then asking questions. And so that was the journey of experiencing public procurement, but from the staffing side. And we had an industry association where members of the industry association could meet and discuss anything that was relevant to their businesses, and federal government procurement was a hot topic on the agenda when we meet up. And as someone that needed to understand and wanted to understand, I was the vocal guy because, again, raised by parents that talk a lot. I was talking a lot and asking questions. And so, hey, we need someone to represent industry, and there's a board position, and you've sat on boards before. So I took on a role of national chair for an industry association, so called Access, and that landed me a seat at PSPC advisory committee tables. And so I was exposed to the hat that's responsible for policies and standing offers. And we ended up creating a supply arrangement. And so that the THS advisory committee was the committee. And so having that appreciation for the other side at that point and the policy side, and bringing my own lived experience to the table to say, well, wearing my supplier hat, like, here's why I think that this piece matters, and here's why we may want to consider looking into that. Yeah. And so that journey was just, it wasn't necessarily a straight path, but it's hats being handed out and saying, here, try this, and hey, like what, and that curiosity of, sure, I'll give that a try. To now being in a position, that's why I was saying it makes more sense in reverse than it did going forward. But it's to bring that experience and that lived experience to help sort of bridge that knowledge gap, right? Yeah. That I find to be very important in procurement land.
Absolutely, I love that. I love. Because you just painted a picture of these accidental discovery, like accidental journey of learning. But now when you reflect, it's like, it was all part of the plan.
Yeah, I guess somebody had a plan.
Exactly. It was all part of the progression. So that's lovely. So now with what you do, what would you say you love about what your work currently?
So it's got to be about bringing something that is so complex, bringing clarity, right? And feeling able to explain the why and the how because of that lived experience. And because I feel like I'm in a position where I've experienced both sides and the different sides to say, here's why I think this matters. And so the stories that will help explain the why and the how that can help reduce some of that friction, right? Reduce some of the noise, or if it can get overwhelming. And I sense that from working with PAC members and clients and procurement folks and all sides. Suppliers feel it, clients feel it. So feeling like I can bring that clarity, and the best feeling is when I have someone say, and this has happened a few times in my career, is to say, you know what, nobody's ever explained it that way before. And that's a great feeling, right? To know that I can maybe help complement something like knowledge and that people have about something that's in procurement land that they've sat in on training before. Like training exists, but to be complementary to what currently exists, to bring in that lived experience to hopefully help someone improve the procurement experience is a great feeling.
Wow. I don't know if we touched on this, but maybe for people who don't know what you do you want to elaborate a little bit more about what you do?
So it's so to help improve the procurement experience for all what I refer to as all three key stakeholders, right? So those wearing a procurement hat, like the bulk of my client base and PAC members, the large majority of them are wearing a procurement hat.
Okay.
And then I have clients that I have worked with in a previous life that I now can support. And those that are on the supplier side that are trying to understand public procurement land. So it's to help improve the procurement experience through practical resources and training and information and stories that help explain the why and the how. So training solutions to help improve the public procurement experience.
I love that. And yeah, we have such a huge gap. Even for me too, in my day-to-day, I feel it, between my clients, between the suppliers that I work with. A lot of it, I see my role is really that translator, communicator role, right?
Exactly.
Because we all have good intentions, but what we get lost in the functionalities and the misunderstandings. But once there's clarity, then I think things move a lot smoother in procurement-wise, at least for me.
And you know what, Bruno? You said something that I love the word translator, right? And it's a word that I use at times as well, right? Is to translate here's what that means,
Yeah.
right? And you're referring to like questions and as part of the Q&A, right? In a competitive process, well, that happens a lot. And the need to translate why does this matter? Why do we need to maybe consider whatever it is that this supplier is saying or suggesting that we do and change or modify or remove? So that role that you're describing and what procurement officers are expected to do is to find enough of the convincing arguments to get clients, in many cases, to understand and accept the fact that they might need to take time in order to save time, right? And so take time to understand and review and consider, what if we change this? What if we don't change that? Like if we modify M2, is that going to have an impact on the outcome? And why would this matter? Why are they bringing this up? So that translator word and that role that procurement officers play, it's a very important role. And that's where your own lived experience and having seen it in a previous procurement and then you bring those stories into, the conversation, say, well, we can choose to say Canada has considered your request, however, the criteria remains unchanged. But in my experience, you would say stuff like, well, there's going to be 2 or 3 follow-up questions asking the same exact thing. Yeah. And so here's why I think it matters to maybe do this and consider that. And that's such a key, and I think people underestimate the time that it would take to do that and the effort and the experience that is required to be able to successfully deliver that kind of a procurement experience.
Yeah, agreed. Now, let's get into some of the misconceptions about what you do.
There are. And I would say that probably the biggest misconception is that I would, that I take sides, right? That I take one particular side. And I've experienced this maybe earlier, and I still do to this day, where there's assumptions made that, oh, well, you're saying that because you're defending industry, right? Or you're saying that because you're taking their side. And I don't take sides. I've experienced the different sides. I understand both sides, and I can help explain what matters to each side. And so training exists, and so it's not about it's not about taking sides. It's to help whoever's expected to be playing some sort of a role in procurement land in the as part of the public procurement experience of professional services. I focus on professional services, but it's to help explain these different sides. But the misconception has a lot to do with, but if you're saying that, is it just because that's what matters to that side? And so it's to constantly, I guess, defend why I say what I say. So it's the arguments, it's the explanations that people become critical and need to find out. And I totally get it. Like, I get that we all, Dan Pink is an author that wrote a book called To Sell is Human, right? And I refer to that book. Now it seems like I'm referring to that more regularly these days, because the added scrutiny on procurement and we're what I'm referring to as the post-ArriveCan era right now, right? Where understanding the why we're asking for all these, whether it's like extra forms to fill out and certifications and extra this, and we now need to consider vendor capacity criteria. And so it's not a bad thing, right? That there is that added scrutiny and that we're paying that much closer attention to ensuring the right outcome, right? So we're talking about outcome-based procurement and best value procurement. And so the importance of, the explaining why it matters, we need to take the time. And what this author was saying is how to sell is human. Like we're all selling something. And so procurement officers that are like, well, what do you mean? Like, we're already buying. You mean now we have to buy and sell? But they already do. Because they're selling the importance of taking the time to do something, right? So you're selling an argument, and you need to be convincing. So that sales skill set and he uses a word that I find useful as well, is like upserving. So how do we help other people's lives, right? And that's what salespeople will do. And as procurement officers, the form isn't just important for me. I don't need you to sign to say that you read whatever the contract or that you're going to follow the rules. It's not as much for me as it's for you and for the organization. And so to have the stories and explanations that explain why it matters to them and to the others is also a big part of what I believe is important. To share, to train people on, to explain, and that is it's a useful concept and something that I feel strongly about, and as well is to help those involved in that procurement experience to do encourage them to do a better job at explaining why it matters to them, but why it should matter to the other side as well.
That is wonderful. Two things that I stuck out to me. One, this whole time I didn't know I was working in sales. I thought I was in procurement, but
now you know.
Now I know. I'll be upselling the value of why we need to take the time to fill out those forms for sure. And then the other thing was sort of this notion of like you're taking sides. And sometimes I like to think like, well, I mean, that already gives the impression that, we're two opposing forces, right? With side A, side B. But at the end of the day, I think there really isn't the side. There's an intention for collaboration, for clarity, for transparency. And really, it's working together to achieve the outcome, the desired outcome. So yeah, that sometimes I reflect on that. It's just like the vendors aren't the enemy, and procurement isn't the enemy, and what we can find in between that we can work together with is really what drives the success. But anyways, that's just me.
No, and it's me too. Like
Yeah.
I feel the same way, Bruno. It's the like forcing and I go back and I'm annoying with my hats, but I insist on the whole hat thing because it is. I find like so perspective matters, and it's understanding what matters to that hat, right? And I would expand and say, and that whole curiosity piece of and that journey that I was saying was kind of a weird path to land where I'm at. But I was given an opportunity years ago to work with the Office of the Auditor General as part of an audit for agile procurements. And so having a better appreciation for those that were wearing the audit hat at the time and being a part of that team that was conducting the audits, it's the perspective of, oh, wow, okay, so it's interesting how this is your methodology or your process, and looking for the story that helps defend the outcome, right? And that's what these auditors were looking for, is help me understand how we went from, you guys having a requirement for whatever, and then landing with a contract that looks like this. Help me understand that journey. Help me understand the story of how. And so when we read these audit reports, or when we're wearing the, Alex, you had Alex Yeglich as our procurement ombud that attended your podcast, and his story and what he'll describe as his role. Well, when we wear the Office of the Procurement Ombud hat as well, to understand, like, what is it that they would be looking for, and why does it matter to them for the process to be fair and defendable, and what is it that we need to take time doing now that's going to maybe save us from having to spend time fielding some sort of a complaint or an issue? Can we prevent that from happening? So the PSPC hat, why are they having to come up with the measures and the recommendations? Well, connecting these dots and understanding that different perspective of why you had Emilio, right, with TBS, those that are shaping these policies, and what do words say on, and why does it matter to them? It will help improve the procurement experience when there's that better understanding of the sides and a better communication to understand the why. Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that. The story that helps defend the outcome. That's something I wrote down. I'm going to use at work. I help define that story to help, from the auditor's perspective and from the various perspectives. Now, you must have come across some challenges. What challenges have you faced, and how did you overcome them?
I would say the one that stuck with me is so year one of PAC, right? And I'm gung-ho and I'm excited. And SIPM had extended an offer where, like, I've been participating actively to SIPM events for years, and there was an opportunity to have a booth, right, at SIPM as an exhibitor. And so I was excited that I got, like, the roll-up banner, and I had my fresh sort of marketing material to show up at SIPM. And I had someone swing by at the booth and ask, well, what is this? What is PAC? And so I'm describing whatever training and that. And like, well, I don't think you should exist. Like, I don't think that you're going to succeed as a company. And it stings, right, when you hear that. And then there I was, like, excited to, and in French we would say, like, "Je pisse mon soleil," right? Like, it kind of it was deflating to a certain extent, right? And
for those who don't understand, is you pissed in my sun.
Does that even translate properly?
I don't know.
Can we even say that on your podcast?
Why not?
So, but it was like, oh, wow, okay. So there I was thinking, like, I'm onto something, and I wanted, and I care about the procurement experience. And I think that my experience, having worn the different hats, is going to be something beneficial to fill that knowledge gap. And then you've got someone saying, well, why do you do that? Like, we already, and this was a government employee saying, well, we already have access to training. We have access to procurement training, and your private sector companies usually fail after a few years. And it was just like this, what is happening, right? So that, but the way that it ended up sort of playing out is having played competitive sports and being competitive by nature, I'm like, okay, well, challenge accepted, right? Challenge accepted. And it meant that I had to, work that much harder to try to prove that what I do matters, and that it can be helpful and beneficial, right? And so this was years ago, and to be honest, you kind of did me a favor, right? Is that because it ironically, I guess it proves the point that the work that I'm doing and that perspectives do matter because of assumptions that people make and these misconceptions of why would we need that? And well, that's weird because we already have training. So the notion of training there's never enough training. Like you can't, so people are coming in from one angle and will have a certain approach to explain a concept. And especially in procurement land, there's so much like the complexities. And so if someone else is able to come in with their own backpack of experience and can help explain in storytelling ways that this matters and here's why you may want to consider taking the time to do this a certain way as opposed to that, why not, right? And if that's what helps people gain the experience that is much needed to help improve the procurement experience. So that's that was challenge number one with PAC, and I gotta say I'm grateful. I'm grateful that it happened because it's that reminder of you always have to just work extra hard. In my case, right? So being private sector, I need to just always stay relevant and current and chasing these examples and bringing enough value so that my clients will understand that there is value and it makes sense to keep buying whatever this guy's selling.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And I've been part of that world where in the procurement world where our thinking sometimes is a little bit limited in one direction, and learning to break away from that to gain extended business acumen. For instance, my podcast is granting me access to greater business acumen than just the training that I would learn and just the job itself, right? There's just so much out there, and there's so much space, so much gaps in understanding that the Canada School can't train everybody for all the challenges. The training materials, internal training documents can't train everybody for all the different challenges. So there's just so much complexity out there, and I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing to help shed light.
Thank you.
On and help us in these challenging times, as you put it, the post-Arrive Can era.
I even intentionally choose to stay away from that word nowadays because it's like I feel there's PTSD of so I call it a live jam.
Live jam
now.
Okay.
Yeah, just so that, or the A word.
The A word. Yeah, we don't say the A word.
Because it's and in a weird kind of way, Bruno, is that especially for the procurement community, I gotta say it's a good thing that it happened. It's not everybody would feel the same way, I suspect, but to bring to show the importance of right, of handling procurements and taking the time to have that story that is defendable and the importance of seeking industry input and how to do that effectively, right? And to make it in a way that's fair and transparent, and the importance of the communication and understanding each sides, right? So that it doesn't come across as restrictive or that we're trying to favor the incumbent. And so these assumptions and the fear that people have when they're involved in the procurement experience, well, what the A word has allowed us to do now is to bring in and to stress the importance of why public procurement matters, why it's different than, let's say, maybe private sector procurement, and is that there is that extra layer of complexity when we're talking about taxpayer money and when we're talking about the governance framework and the rules. And you've had some of your previous guests have done a great job at explaining how those that have succeeded, it took them time to understand, and read the supply manual and all of that, and having like played and spent time reviewing and understanding the rules and bid clarification versus bid repair. And there are so many words in procurement land, and it's nearly impossible to just stay on top of all of it, right? So if it's to have people better appreciate why there is a need for some of these rules, and yes, it can get complex, and there's a lot, So somebody in wearing a procurement hat that can help reassure clients and suppliers that here's why. And here's what you need to understand. And there's like a 94-page template, but here are the key takeaways of what's in there. And your contract has 216 pages, but here are the key takeaways of what matters and should matter and what your options are. And so that role that procurement officers play is critical. It's crucial. And so the more that we can all, I guess, collectively sort of compile experiences and get into storytelling to explain the importance of why it matters, everybody wins.
Everybody wins, yeah. And these challenges that we face only make us better. I think that's one of the themes that I'm learning for sure. Any exciting things that you're currently working on?
I've got new course content that I've recently made available to members, which is exciting. So productivity is the word, I guess, le mot du jour, and then the word of the day. And I say this half jokingly in some of my training sessions, is that it seems like that the only measure that matters in procurement land is time, right? Like, how do we save time, and how much time is this going to take? And really, like, do I need to take the time to do this? And can we just skip the RFI and go straight to RFP, because that's going to take time. So time is a measure that is crucial to all sides. And so convincing others in taking the time to do certain things in order to save time later, it's easier said than done. And so I've got content and master classes that I've put together to help people save time and explain how, and examples. And so there's courses that I've made available in e-learning format on the platform recently. And I've got some exciting new master classes that I put together that I'm enjoying delivering. I love doing the in-person thing. I've been doing virtual for quite some time with webinars but doing the in-person, I mean, there's no better feeling to be able to see and the live reaction and to the aha moments and the questioning of, but you say that, but like why? Like the dynamics is great. So there's that's new and exciting. And so I've made that. You were talking about business acumen. I've tagged, like, all of my content. I've tagged against the procurement competencies from Treasury Board. And so we wrapped up doing this exercise months ago so that it can align with the learning targets that federal government employees, they have to spend anywhere between 21 to 28 hours. And so I felt that it was important to make that training available through the e-learning, through the platform as well. And so tagging against all the key competencies, and business acumen is a big part of stuff that I get into with the examples. And so I've got over 100 hours worth of content now that I've got up on the site, and with 30 some odd different modules of e-learning with knowledge checks. And so that I'm excited to be able to provide as an experience to PAC members. And it's available to those that are wearing all three hats. Okay. And so there's people have to get into ninja mode on the platform with an icon and a nickname so that it doesn't compromise the integrity of a procurement process. And so people can exchange and they're in ninja mode. So that experience is now available to members so that they can understand sides and perspectives. And so planning on doing more of these types of supplier insights sessions. So that's also on the menu for the rest of the year.
Wow, that's very exciting. And yeah, if we wanted to find out more, we would reach out to you, and where would we go to access your
So the
world?
website, there's the procurementalliance.ca website. There's stuff on there. People can sign up. I host these regular live webinars, right? So they're live at 10:55 now on Wednesdays. And people that are intrigued and are curious as to, well, what does this guy get into and what kind of examples, they can go to the website and sign up for a free webinar. And if they feel that this is something that could be helpful, then we can go through the demo process and see if there's a training package that would make sense. But the website would probably be the best option.
Perfect. Any advice to procurement officers?
Stay curious. Stay curious. I had someone, senior procurement officer, recently tell me, we were going through, and it was like this. It was this particular clause that lives in the standard instructions, and it's buried on page whatever, right? And it's conduct of evaluation, and then there's a process, right, for things that procurement officers can do as part of the evaluation process. And she's like, her comment was, I should have known that. And so letting go of ego, right, and recognizing that it's okay not to know, but just park the ego and be curious and ask why and say, like, and it's almost like as if there are too many words to stay on top of everything, and templates coming out like every 15 minutes and stuff. Yeah. And we know why, but it's that pressure of feeling like you need to know everything, and something that you may have learned years ago that would have since changed, right? So the curiosity of asking why and trying to understand the perspective and the why it matters, and to say, you know what, I don't know, but there's so much that's happening in procurement land. Like, let me find out and I'll get back to you, right? And so having that service-oriented kind of approach of saying, I want to help you. I understand what you're saying. And I know like every procurement officer that I've had dealings with, I would say, or for the most part, they all want to help. They all care enough to try to create the right type of outcome for their clients and for the organization as a whole. But it's assumptions that get in the way, and maybe that pressure to feel like they need to know, and the pressure that some clients will put on procurement officers saying, well, isn't there a standing offer thing that like, and you should know? And well, you know what? Maybe they don't know. Yeah. And maybe there's a new one, and maybe it changed. And so it's okay to not know, and it's okay to ask and to be curious. And so to that whole passionate curiosity, right, of saying, okay, I'm interested about what you're saying, but I don't know exactly everything that what you're describing. I don't know enough about your world, but tell me more and ask, and let me find out, let me look into it. And then, manage these expectations by saying, I'll get back to you though. And it's whatever day today, give me a couple days. And all. So if we're doing a better job at managing expectations and saying, okay, well, here's where we're at now, and here's what needs to happen next. I may not know everything that we're going to do next, but I know what we need to do now. And so managing these expectations and then maybe addressing potential assumptions, extremely beneficial, I think, to create that procurement experience.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. Is there any call to action you would have for listeners?
I would say I got to go back to the hat thing. Is to say, try it out. Like, just the reach for that hat, or encourage those on your teams. If you're a manager, if you're like to maybe reach for a hat and to try to understand the why, right? And so if it's to wear the hat or attempt to wear the hat, or to better understand why it matters to whoever's on the other side, ask, ask to see. And if it's not clear, and I insist on saying that, is that, and I'll use a Q&A example, Bruno. You've got, I've told this to suppliers, by the way, is you're not as clear as you think you are. I've seen some of the questions during Q&A. Of course, you didn't get a clear response because you didn't ask a clear question. And that's challenging for clients, for procurement folks when they're, so if it just doesn't make sense, and I'm saying suppliers, and I'm using the Q&A example, but if it doesn't make sense, because whoever's asking you to do something isn't necessarily being clear with, or it doesn't make sense to you, it's okay, interesting. Help me understand why. Help me understand why this matters. What do you mean by this? Going back to the Q&A example, can you give me an example? Can you give me an analogy? Why are you suggesting this? Why do you want us to remove M1, right? So that I can bring this back to my client so that we can give it the attention and consideration that it deserves. But it's okay to not know. It's just, I find that at times people maybe feel the pressure that they should know. And in some cases, it's impossible for them to know.
Yeah. Wow.
It's okay to not know.
It's okay to not know.
It's
I love
okay
that.
to not know.
Makes my job a lot less stressful and anxiety ridden. So,
Yeah.
Well, we've come to the close of all the questions that I could ask you. I'm just going to open the floor back to you. Is there any comments, anything you'd like to share for us?
It's that service oriented sort of how can I help the other person that I'm working with, or help, so if I'm a procurement officer, what is it that I can say or do or ask that would help them? So that whole concept of upserving and helping the other side and will be beneficial to them. So if you're wearing a supplier hat, how can I help? What kind of information do you think would be beneficial to the other side that you would need to share? So avoiding these assumptions that people should know and is going to go a long way to help improve the procurement experience. I know I'm repeating myself by saying that, but I firmly believe that as far as where we're going, and if we're throwing AI in the mix, and I know we didn't get into that at length, but that fear, right? So that fear of, is technology going to replace my role, or is AI going to replace my role as a procurement officer? For as long as there's this whole kind of experience of caring for understanding what the other side is looking at doing, as what the other side wants, whoever is able to provide that experience of helping demystify, and in procurement land, there's so much gray. I can't imagine that robots and AI are going to be able to do the work that is required to translate and to help sort of understand everything that it spits out as an explanation for whatever it is that they're trying to get done, whether it's a statement of work, whether it's coming up with evaluation criteria. It'll go through the work of producing words. And then someone's job is going to be to explain why these words matter and which words matter and why it should matter. And then making sense of something that is complex. And in that space right now with public procurement, there's going to be a need for these individuals that have accumulated that experience and that knowledge and these stories to help explain why that matters. And so focusing on becoming that type of individual, doesn't matter which hat you're wearing, to help the other side improve the procurement experience, that would be maybe the last piece of maybe advice of, hey, try that.
I love that. Try that. And you may, going back to the theme of your journey, you may accidentally stumble onto something that will lead you into greater knowledge and something greater.
That's it. Trust the journey.
Trust the journey, yeah.
There's stuff that if you're focusing on, like if you're trying out experiences, and like you'll land somewhere. Somebody's got a plan.
Yeah. I love that. Well, you've answered all my questions. I want to thank you so much again for coming and sharing your knowledge and very valuable insights. Thank you for sharing your website so that listeners can reach out and explore more of what you do. And it's been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Bruno. Appreciate it.
Okay, with that, we've come to the close. Thank you for listening. Please like and share to those who you think may find value in this podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.